Hello and welcome to week 4. And this is going to be one of the last weeks that we have. I say one of the last only because we've got kind of a half week next week and we are wrapping up the content. And so the majority of what you're going to be expected to understand for the remainder of the class will happen this week. And we'll try to wrap up whatever we can on the short week next week. So we are actually going to follow the pattern. There will not be any formal classes after next week. But at the same time, I will be available to help you out with the final projects and anything that you have to turn in that you have not turned in already. But what we're going to talk about today is the internet banner ad. So the internet banner ad, we introduced it last time, and as we said before, that is the way to go when we talk about internet advertising. So the internet banner ad kind of resembles print, meaning that if you look at the average newspaper, which most of you don't see that often anymore, you will see those little squares of content. And the same thing with magazines. Magazines sometimes have little windows of advertising content within articles, and sometimes they have full pages. And so this is kind of like that, although rarely do you find a full page that is not some kind of a pop-up or something that's threatening to be a pop-up. So typically, the banner ad resembles print advertising. Most importantly, it does not interfere with browsing activity. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be annoying. You can have little banner ads that flash at you, that appear to flicker and do other things like that, and that can be a problem. But overall, it doesn't interfere with the browsing experience. It doesn't take over your computer, and it's actually not using much bandwidth. So it's designed to fit within and alongside online content, which means that like it would be if you were laying out a newspaper using a dummy sheet, you would have, instead of the actual ads pasted up on your dummy sheet, you'd have windows into which ads could be placed. And so when the content is online, there is a program of some kind that is assigning that space to the appropriate banner ad. And these show up in virtually all browser experiences. Anytime you're reading anything, usually a news article of some kind, you see all kinds of ads cropping up in and around what you're doing. Even if you're shopping on Amazon or anywhere else, the ads are everywhere because there's a lot of money to be made there. And they come in a variety of sizes, all with various price tags, which we're going to be talking about today. And you will be expected to know some of them. But right now, the important thing is to get a general idea of what they do. Okay, so formatting. And this has always been true whenever you're dealing with advertising or anything that has to be inserted into video or internet-based content, is that you have to get the formatting right. You're going to be expected to work within some very serious parameters. And you got to stay within those limits, and some of them may seem more obvious than others. Like, for example, if you do a television ad or a radio ad, you're told exactly how long it must be. And this is kind of the same thing. Each banner ad size is accounted for in content placement, meaning that they only give you a certain frame they put it in. And so if your ad doesn't fit that frame, it's either going to have to be modified or it's just not going to work. And so that's something that you must understand. And these lots are sold based on multiple schemes, meaning that you can pay based on how many times it's seen. You can also pay in some cases based on when someone clicks on it. It could be that they're making a deal that's like that. And there are multiple ways you can do this, and it's always going to change. But the ad itself is most likely going to be very similar. Now, the banners themselves can be created by anyone. Now, that's where you come in. Now, some of these ad agencies would have their own people do it, or if you're working, if you are the client, then you could hire someone to do it. But at the same time, whoever that person is being hired could be you. That could be part of what you do, either working for an ad agency or working as an independent designer. And one of the reasons why this is important to understand is that really, this is a very easy project because all you're doing is making a picture. As long as it fits within various parameters, which are actually easy to understand, really that's what it is. You got to follow the parameters, and some of this has to do with bandwidth as well. And you can make multiple banner ad sizes for any product. So if someone gives you a product, you can give them every size in the book, which you would have to format within that window. Or possibly you can give them only the ones that they want or only the standard ones. And that's kind of where we're going to be hovering around today. And bandwidth matters. Now, this is going to be more important in the next lecture because we're going to be talking about animation. But simply put, these ads have got to be incredibly light. They've got to be very, very small in terms of how much space they take up on the computer. And so that means that you've got to use fewer colors if possible. That means that you've got to streamline everything. You obviously can't use a bandwidth heavy format like a BMP file. It's got to be a PNG, a GIF, or whatever it is they're asking you for. And whatever that is, it is. And so sometimes they'll tell you the format. Sometimes they'll just tell you how big it can be. In which case, you just got to work it down until it gets to that point. And that's important, otherwise they won't accept it. Okay, design concepts. First principles. When you're designing an internet ad, you got the same basic problem you had when designing television, print, radio. Attract attention. You got your ad is going to be sitting in a sea of content. There's got to be a reason why a user would look at that little piece of real estate that you've got and possibly click on it. You've got to get their attention. You've got to get them to know that you're there. You've got to display the product or brand. They've got to see advertising and in a positive light. And they've got to be provided with any information that they need. It could just be that you're asking them to click on it. It could be that you're giving them, some kind of other information that shows up in the form of an animation. Whatever it is, they've got to see what they need to see in order to do what you want them to do. And interactivity and animation is also possible. You can have ads that change when you pass over them, depending on how much latitude you're given. You can be having buttons within the ad that they can push. All of these things are possibilities. Not all of them are common, but all of them are possibilities. Okay, so here we are on Google, and Google is basically giving us the opportunity to look at some of their ad sizes, and I'm going to use them as an example. There may be others, but these I had definitely seen before, and I did want to go over them. Okay, so I have zoomed in this content a little bit so you can get a better idea of what we're going to be looking at. And so we're going to be talking about various ad sizes for your banner ads. And the first one that comes up on their list is something that would show up in a space like that. That is 300 by 250, and they're calling that the medium rectangle. And so that's the size that you would have to work with. Now, let's demonstrate how you would handle that. So we're going to go to Photoshop for a second. And I'm going to create a new document. And so that gives me this dialog box. And here, I am just going to go, notice how it's defaulting to 1920 by 1080. So I want to go 300 by 250. And if I create that, that's what it looks like. And so that is my little box. And so then, if I zoom in on that, you see that's what I'm starting with. Now, it's important to understand that we're looking at this, and this is 300% resolution. So therefore, if I were to, for example, paint something on there, let's say I give it a little darker color, and I were to just grab a brush, and it would have to be a lot smaller than that. Let's say I bring the size down a little bit. You see, I can actually do a lot with that, but if I start zooming in, you'll see pixels very quickly. So the reason why I'm pointing that out is that you've got to keep your art very small to make this work. And you've got to make sure that any text you have is big enough to be seen, because if you take it down to 100%, that is your field. That's what you're working with. And so make sure that your important information is visible. And so that would be the medium rectangle. And if we go down here, they have something called the large rectangle, which is obviously almost the same thing. It's just a little bigger, 336 by 280. Now this one I remember from a while back, and that's still there, obviously. It's called the leaderboard, and this is 728 by 90. And so if we go back to Photoshop for a second, and I make a new document, and I call that 728 by 90. And remember, this is pixels, not inches. So that becomes my leaderboard. And so whatever it is I put in there has to fit that type of a shape. And this literally has to be exact. You cannot go even a little bit taller than that. It's got to fit into that window. Then we have the what they call the half page, 300 by 600. Now this, I suspect, would be a very expensive ad to purchase, but you can do it. It is available, and your client may want it. And then finally they have something here, 320 by 100, and this is designed for mobile devices. This is known as the large mobile banner, and it fits. If you're browsing on a little bitty tiny mobile phone, that is a way that you can get a banner ad in there. Now, if you notice, a lot of these other ones, they have indicated will work with the mobile phone. So if you're using Google ad systems, there's very few of these that will actually work with the mobile phone because obviously it's a different type of screen. Now, I'm not going to go over these, but you'll notice there's a whole lot of other devices and a lot of other formats that you can use if you have the ability to do so. But the ones that we've gone through so far are probably the most common ones, so we're going to stick with those. And so you get to pick which one you feel is most appropriate for what you want to do, but it might not be a bad idea to think about that for a while. Think about maybe doing more than one, just for the sake of covering your bases. Okay, now let's look at a couple of examples. And this is basically bannersnack.com. And this is just somebody's idea of like a little, like a film festival for banner ads. And I thought it'd be a good place to find some neat little examples. And let's just look at a few of these and see how they've done it. Now notice, want a Fanta. These are Fanta sodas. And notice how bright the colors are. Remember when we talked about how to draw attention to something? One of the things that you can do is use bright colors, warm colors, placement. You don't have control over here because the banner ad's going to show up where it does, and size, of course. And so what they've done here is they've used bright colors. They've displayed the product. They've displayed the name, and ideally this would get your attention. And if you happen to be so inclined, you might choose to click on that. And if we move down here, this would be another example. Now notice these are close to what you would call the half-page ads. All-wheel drive is in season. The Lexus dealer. All-wheel drive. Taste refined. And again, they got motion, they got action, they got activity, and they're selling these cars. This is another example. And here we have trade in and save. Now this is a good example of what you can put in besides content. They're talking about some sort of a promotion. Now that's not necessarily out of the question because you can have a banner ad that's designed to run over a very clearly defined period of time. And so if you've got a sale and you want to put it up now, there you go. And so you can have that information if that's important and everything else. Now, to be honest, I don't get this ad. It's not really working for me because I don't understand what this is supposed to be, but that's okay. Now here we have some comedy, some style, and what I like about this is that it gives you an idea. Make sure I'm not in the way. Make sure it gives you an idea of how you can run the same campaign within different frames. So, for example, Ride the Afternoon Wave, and we've got this artwork, which is a signature artwork, meaning that all of these banners are using the same style. And so if you saw this, you would know it's a part of the same campaign. Red Bull gives you wings, and that's your slogan there. So now we're talking about Red Bull. And over here, walk smarter, not hard, or work smarter, not harder. And there you've got, looks like they got a button there that you could push. the product is displayed, and so forth. Take control of the game. Now here, they've abbreviated the word because now apparently we're into the new world of newspeak. Now suddenly we're eliminating vowels, we're abbreviating words because we're looking at them on smaller screens, which is neither here nor there, but it's kind of interesting how the ad has evolved over time. So if we look at a couple more of these, speak to your niche. Here basically we got Microsoft and finishing sign up for Azure. And so I will say that I don't see much of a difference between these ads, but there is one. And let's look at one more. Here's something good. I like these. This is a good picture. Looking at this, the product is being displayed. I don't think you'll ever find a hotel as beautiful as that in real life, especially not with the beautiful clear waters and everything like that. This is a fantasy image, but very good. The world is right here, Hilton. And so the product, attention-getting image, everyone say, oh, I'd love to be there, that sort of thing. If, in fact, that's where you want to go. We look over here. We get the same basic idea, maybe not quite as good in that regard. But I do like the fact that they're giving you this information. They're saying it's 40% off, book now, Hilton. And so if you were in the mood for a getaway, this may actually do it for you. What, 40% off? Well, I can't pass that one up. And so there's your interactivity. Use bright colors. Okay. Lego my ego. I remember those. Okay, once again, bright colors. The product is prominently featured. Attention getting. Food always gets people's attention. And bright colors always get people's attention. And notice that the product cannot be missed. And so it's not like you're going to walk around and look for any old Egos. You're going to remember those. Whatever you call those. Waffles, I guess. Okay. Product images. Very good idea. All right, so these are some examples of what you can do or how you can approach your banner ad. Notice how I believe that's a few different shapes there. And these are all possibilities. This is the half-page ads. These are your, I believe those are your large and small or medium squares. And you can choose how you want to use those. And so what I'm asking you to do now is to take your product and think of how you can apply this to it. How can you advertise your product? Now remember that when your customer clicks on that banner ad, they're going to go to your website or they're going to go wherever you want them to go. And so if they express interest in your product, they will automatically be given the opportunity to buy it. And so that's really what this is all about. But at the same time, the goal is to get them to do that. All you want to do, it's called clickbait. Clickbait, we're admitting it. You want them to click on it. Give them a reason to do that. And so you got to compress all of your wonderful talent in a little bitty piece of real estate and give it a good punch. That's what you got to do. And so that's what I want you to think about, and I want you to start working on your designs as soon as you can. And the good news is, if we go back to Photoshop, you can literally build your image right there. You can basically cut and paste pictures from somewhere else in there. You can create gradients. Let's see if the gradient tool is active. You can create gradients. So if we do that, something along those lines, you can have your text in here, and you can have maybe another picture here. So you can make that image anything that you want it to be. Okay, so the final warning is this. Whatever it is that you produce, let's say you're producing a still image. Maybe that's what you want to produce. If that's the best approach, that's the best approach. I'm also going to suggest that you consider an animation, which we'll talk about in the next lecture. And if you want to try to tackle that, you can. You have the ability to do so because you have the software. But that doesn't mean that's the way to go either. You just have to think about it. You got to figure out what is going to work for you. Now, what I don't want you to do is say, oh, all I got to do is create an image. And so then basically you put together something that takes you 10 minutes and you send it in. Remember, this is a major project. And so it's kind of like writing a haiku. You can't just write a haiku. You got to actually think about it. You got to craft it. You got to work at it. And then eventually you got it. Wow, what a beautiful piece of art. And so that's what this is. Because remember, somebody may pay thousands of dollars for this if it works. And so if you produce the sort of artwork that generates thousands of dollars in revenue, there you go. All right, so give that some thought, and we'll talk about it this week.